Have you noticed how anxiety has become the very air many people breathe? The racing heart, the restless mind, the fear of not being able to cope. It seems like living anxiously has become part of the modern routine. But what if I told you that Jesus has already revealed a forgotten truth that could break this cycle of fear and restore the peace you so desperately seek? This truth is neither theoretical nor distant. It was spoken among a people living under oppression, with daily uncertainty, much more similar to our reality than you might imagine. Jesus didn't ignore anxiety. He taught a way to face it. A path that almost no one practices, but which transforms the way you see every detail of life. And that's what I want to show you in this video. Jesus' most overlooked truth about anxiety. If you're tired of living on autopilot, trapped in fear, stay with me until the end. And take the opportunity to follow the channel, because this message needs to reach more people who are trapped in this same cycle of fear and anxiety. No one wakes up immune to fear. The heart races, the mind fills with anxiety, and it seems like life never slows down. Many believe this is normal, an inevitable part of adulthood. But Jesus didn't treat anxiety as something natural. He called it a silent enemy that steals faith. And the most surprising thing is that he already laid out a clear plan for dealing with it. Most people read the Sermon on the Mount as if it were just a set of good spiritual practices. But behind every word, Jesus offered a psychological and spiritual strategy for breaking the cycle of worry. He didn't say don't worry as if offering empty advice. He said it as if revealing a hidden secret, a mechanism most people ignore to this day. And therein lies the most overlooked truth. Anxiety doesn't go away on its own. It can be overcome with vigilance and daily practice. Jesus knew that fear would always try to occupy space in the mind. Therefore, he taught a process of substitution, a discipline of the soul, something that not only calms but transforms the way you live. But to understand this process, we need to return to the context in which he spoke. When Jesus said, "Do not be anxious," he wasn't speaking to a calm and silent audience. He was speaking to people living under the weight of the Roman Empire with no guarantee of food the next day and in constant fear of persecution. In other words, he didn't say this in an easy world, but in an environment of oppression and collective anxiety. This detail changes everything, because if Jesus' command were only for moments of peace, it wouldn't make sense. What he taught is that the mind needs to be trained even and especially in the midst of pressure. It was in the context of real fear that he told us to look at the lilies of the field and the birds of the air. He was teaching how to transform our attention. Here's the key that almost no one realizes. Anxiety grows when you focus on what you can't control. And Jesus' practice is precisely to redirect that focus to daily signs of God's provision. It's not poetry, it's discipline. He was training people to see evidence of divine care in small details, and this goes deeper than it seems. Jesus knew that the soul's greatest enemy is not a lack of resources, but an uncontrolled imagination. Anxiety creates scenarios that don't always come true, but which already make the heart ache as if they were true. It's like carrying a backpack full of fears that will never come to pass. And this overload gradually drains faith. When he said each day has enough trouble of its own, he wasn't just talking about resignation. He was exposing the root of anxiety, living in tomorrow before its time. The anxious mind anticipates pain, creates invisible pressures, and loses itself in a future that doesn't even exist yet. Therefore, the command wasn't passive, it was a call to return to the present. This is the point most people forget. Fear thrives on anticipation, and Jesus revealed that the antidote is to train our consciousness to be in the now, recognizing God's presence in every moment. But this practice comes at a price. Because to live in the present, you must relinquish control of the future, and not everyone is willing to do that. The root of much fear is the attempt to control what doesn't depend on us. This is why anxiety is never satisfied. It demands total predictability, but real life never delivers. Jesus confronted this illusion when he said that no one can add even a single cubit to their life simply by worrying. He showed that absolute control is a lie that imprisons. Relinquishing control doesn't mean being irresponsible or living without planning. It means recognizing the limits of one's strength and resting where only God can act. This rest isn't laziness, it's active faith. It's making decisions wisely, but accepting that the end result is beyond our control. It's trusting even when our heart cries out for certainty. And here's the uncomfortable truth: giving up control hurts, because it means letting go of the illusion that you can hold on to every thread in your life. But paradoxically, it's only when you let go of that rope that anxiety begins to lose its grip. And Jesus not only taught this, he lived it. But before we understand how, we need to look at a practical example he gave. Jesus didn't choose the lilies of the field and the birds of the sky by chance. He knew that the anxious mind needs practical symbols to retrain its gaze. While everyone else was looking at soldiers, taxes, and scarcity, he pointed to flowers and birds as living reminders of God's faithfulness. It was a daily exercise in focus, a training to break the cycle of anxiety. This training changes the logic of life. Instead of clinging to the fear of what's missing, you begin to perceive signs of what's already been provided. Your heart finds rest not because your problems have disappeared, but because you learn to see evidence of divine presence where before you saw only emptiness. It's like exchanging cloudy lenses for clear glasses. But here's the most overlooked detail. Jesus didn't say, "Look once." He used the verb in the continuous sense, observe, contemplate. In other words, it's not an isolated act. It's a discipline. Anyone who wants to overcome anxiety needs to repeat this practice until it becomes natural. And that's what he called watching. But watching is much more than observing. When Jesus commanded us to be watchful, he wasn't asking his disciples to live tensely, looking around in fear. Watchfulness, in the spiritual sense, is keeping the mind awake, aware, and attentive to the movements of the heart. It's noticing when fear begins to creep in and anxiety arises to steal peace. Watchfulness is the practice of not being caught off guard by one's own thoughts. Anxiety almost always starts small, a detail you interpret negatively, a worry that grows until it becomes a whirlwind. Being vigilant means noticing this beginning before it becomes an avalanche. It means stopping, breathing, and remembering. This isn't from God. It means confronting the lie before it takes over your mind. But being vigilant also means choosing where to place your eyes. If the mind is focused on news, comparisons, and demands, it's natural for the heart to become restless. Jesus taught us to shift this focus to what is eternal, not what is fleeting. But this redirection requires practice, because the mind doesn't discipline itself. This is where the second part comes in, prayer. When Jesus spoke about prayer, he wasn't thinking of long speeches or fancy words. He warned against empty repetitions and showed that prayer is talking to the Father directly and truthfully. This simplicity is liberating because it removes the burden of performance and opens space for sincerity. It is in vulnerability that anxiety begins to lose its power. Many people treat prayer as a last resort, when it should be the first step. It's there that fear is exposed, restless thoughts are poured out, and the heart finds rest. Jesus taught that the Father already knows what we need before we even ask. This doesn't mean we shouldn't speak, but that we can speak without masks. True prayer doesn't erase external problems, but reorganizes the world from within. It removes anxiety from the center and replaces it with God. But here's the crucial point. Prayer isn't an escape, it's alignment. Once you align yourself, you return to life with renewed courage. And this courage is proven in small daily choices, exactly where Jesus insisted most. Jesus knew that anxiety is not overcome by a grand act of faith, but by small decisions repeated daily. It is in the moment of choosing between trust or despair, between gratitude or complaint, that the mind is trained. Each choice is like a brick placed in the construction of a life without suffocating fear. These choices may seem simple, turning off your cell phone before bed, being grateful for a meal instead of complaining, taking a deep breath when faced with an unexpected challenge. But this is precisely the power of Jesus' teaching. He didn't speak of instant miracles, but of daily discipline that shapes the heart. And it's in this process that anxiety begins to lose ground. Because with each small act of trust, you disarm the fear that tries to grow. With each act of gratitude, you break the cycle of complaint that fuels anxiety. And with each choice to look to God, you strengthen your faith. But Jesus also made it clear, without seeking the kingdom first, everything else becomes unstable. When Jesus said, "Seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness," he wasn't just offering a spiritual priority. He was offering a direct antidote to anxiety. Because when the heart is aligned with the kingdom, fear loses ground and worries find their proper place. It's like adjusting the soul's center of gravity. Anxiety grows when we make the temporary our greatest pursuit. When what matters most is money, status, or approval, the mind never rests. But when the greatest quest is for the kingdom, everything necessary finds its proper order. Jesus promised that the rest would be added not by magic, but as a consequence of living in the right center. This is the point that almost no one realizes. Anxiety isn't just a problem of an agitated mind, it's a problem of a disordered heart. Fear dominates when the kingdom takes a back seat. But when you put God first, even external chaos begins to have a limit within you. And that's where Jesus leads to the final stage, learning to truly rest. The rest Jesus promised is not the absence of problems, but the presence of peace. He said, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." This is not poetry. It is a practical promise. The anxious heart finds relief not when everything is resolved, but when it surrenders to Him. It is in this place of surrender that fear loses its power. Resting in Jesus means releasing the weight that was never yours. It means stopping struggling alone against future scenarios and trusting that tomorrow is in the right hands. This rest isn't found in fleeting distractions or human promises, but in a real presence that sustains even in the darkest valley. He didn't promise to take the valley away, but He did promise to walk through it with you. And here's the most overlooked truth. Overcoming anxiety isn't a one-off achievement, but an ongoing relationship. It's learning each day to watch, pray, choose small things, seek the kingdom, and rest. Jesus showed that life doesn't have to be dominated by fear. But the question remains, will you continue carrying it alone? Or will you learn to rest in Him? Now, Jesus' most overlooked truth about anxiety wasn't just advice, but a practical path to overcoming fear. Watching, praying, choosing the present, seeking first the kingdom, and resting in Him, all of this isn't theory. It's discipline that can change your life starting today, but only if you decide to apply it. Anxiety doesn't disappear because you watch a video or read a promise. It begins to fade when you choose to obey in small ways day after day. So let me ask you, what will your choice be today? Will you continue to carry the future alone, or will you trust in the God who has already promised to take care of tomorrow? If this message resonated with you, follow the channel and turn on notifications. Here you'll find more content that will help you walk freely, with courage, without being held hostage by fear and anxiety. Because this journey doesn't end here, it's just beginning.